What's good? What's good? What's good? People, and traders and dedicated gold chasers. Welcome back to another live video by the modern day traders. Well, the modern day trader today, myself, Mossy. And yeah, just a little check in midweek, looking at the charts and yeah, just checking in for the week ahead. The rest of the week. Yeah, just diving straight into like what my week has been so far. Today, specifically, I took a break even trade. Not too bad, not too bad at all. Buys on GJ. So the daily was bullish, 4H was bullish, and we had 4H correlation. Uh, and yeah, it's been an up and down week really. To to be fair, so far I've taken 3 trades. I didn't record my third trade. Let me actually share my screen with you guys. So so I didn't record this trade as yet. So this was today's trade. What you can see is that from this 1 minute time frame. So from a 1 minute perspective, we had structure pushing bullish. This is the 15-minute time frame. We had a break above the 15-minute key area in the market, and all we did was we waited for price action to pull back to create the wick. And then once price action created the wick, we anticipated that price action was going to push to the upside. And once we broke above 720, continue. And we got the clean push to the upside. However, we got a break even. Now, if I go back to the before picture, what you'll be able to see is that you can debate that this was the previous higher low. But what I've just noticed recently is that like a lot of the trades that I've taken where I'm anticipating this to be the higher low and price action makes a new higher high, it tends to like come back to that higher low, take you out, but then hold the actual higher low or lower high and then continue in the right direction. Now, jumping back onto what the week looks like so far, what you can see is that price, well, just the week in general look a bit flat, bro. Now, obviously, I have a break even sort again, but yeah, so 0% so far for the week. 3 trades taken, one win, one loss, one break even. Pretty straightforward week so far. And yeah. What am I seeing in the markets today? This is actually, I didn't do too much with regards to DXY's analysis from last week, just because last week played out exactly as anticipated. Now, last week when we were on the live, I pointed out that we were in this point of interest right here. What you can see is that this was Wednesday. We were in this point of interest. And what I was anticipating that this being a daily point of interest was a push to the upside. Now, what you can see is that Friday with NFP, we got the clean push to the upside. Now, like after the clean push, we got the break of structure as well. And once the break of structure occurred, then really and truly we had this pullback. And I'm anticipating from a daily perspective, really, that this being a retest of this point of interest that was created from this impulsive move to the upside. So coming down to now the 4H is a bit tricky in that what you can see is the price action actually created a new high. After creating these highs, price action pulled back, created a high low, new high. So in theory, price action now from the 4H perspective is bearish. But what I do know is that when price action gets into these areas here from a 4H perspective, we can start to anticipate that price action could potentially bounce off from this. And what could you target? Even though price action is bearish, you have all this clean imbalance that could be fooled. Like all of this clean imbalance that could potentially be fooled. So with that being said, like we can anticipate and we can strongly anticipate the price action is going to bounce out of these areas unless we really just completely blow through the area. In that case, you won't be taking an entry because what would my entry model look like? And bear in mind, we don't really trade UE or DXY. We really just use DXY as a area in the market or a indicator per se for confluence and correlation. So what you can anticipate is something somewhat like this, where price action pushes to the downside, creates on the lower time frame, so 30-minute, 15-minute, creates new structure below these areas. Then you get the shift of structure, you get a retest, and you can see the continuation and price action to move in those types of waves. So that's what I'm anticipating from a DXY perspective. Now, when we jump into EU, what you'll be able to see is that it's the similar thing, the exact same thing. So if I'm anticipating for price action to pull back on DXY into the points of interest, then similarly on EU, and EU played out exactly as anticipated too from last week. Similarly on EU, what I'm doing is I'm anticipating for price action to pull back, fill these imbalances right here, fill these imbalance on the 4H time frame, pull back into these points of interest, and then from that point of interest, potentially see a shift of structure. And once the shift of structure occurs on the lower time frame, what you'll then be able to do is start anticipating that we're going to have the continuation of the higher time frame trend into these areas here. Now, the good thing is that EU didn't necessarily shift structure, it doesn't seem like it shifted structure to the downside. So there is potential for price action to still continue pushing bearish completely. So this is actually looking quite clean. The only thing that I don't really like is the way price action has impulsively pushed to the upside, but it's completely fine. I do think out of these areas, once we do slow down on the lower time frames, you could start to anticipate that price action could push to the downside. Jumping into GJ. Now GJ has been quite a mess lately over the past like 3-4 trading days from like Wednesday. We've been pretty slow, but what you can see is that we have this daily high value area from these wicks right here. And you can see that we had an initial reaction around the 29th of May. Now we are 3 weeks from that date, and you can see the price action pushed away from these areas pretty cleanly. And once price action pushed away from these areas pretty cleanly, we have in this bounce once again. I think this could potentially be viewed as a fake out. And now you can see price action push into the downside or having this rejection or from these high value areas here. So then how do you actually treat this? What I'd do is I'd scale down time frames onto the 1H or even the 30-minute to start anticipating where structural areas could break from a lower time frame perspective. So what does that mean? So you look for your last higher high, which was here. My last higher high in the uptrend was here. We had a breakout, then we had a pullback, forming these higher lows to then form those higher highs. So now what you can clearly see is that price action has formed these lows and broken below previous higher lows. So what does that really mean? That means that when price action breaks below these areas right here, that we're getting a continuation of a newly formed bearish trend. And you can add the confluence of this daily high value area. And when that occurs, you can start to anticipate that now not only can you say that we're in a high value area from a daily perspective where we could potentially start slowing down, but you can also see that the intraday structures are starting to form bearish trends, and then you can start anticipating that price action could potentially start reversing or pushing to the downside for a bit from these areas. And that's simply it. So what I'd be doing is from a intraday perspective, I'd be looking for price action to break below these areas, pull back either into retest of the 50% area or into these uh previous, what would now be the previous lower high to form a new lower low. And that's simply it. Like that's all you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking for price action to continue pull back into an area in the market where you find that it's a key level where price action fails to break above and shows signs to continue to the downside, and then you take it to the downside. Now going back to the 4H time frame, let's jump onto USD ZAR. Now something that I did note here on USD ZAR is that you can clearly see that yes, we had the clean push to the upside. However, this is like something that I'm always speaking about. When price action comes into a point of interest, you don't just trade it based on the fact that price action comes into the point of interest. You need to see a reaction out of it. Now, what you can see here is that when price action came into this point of interest that created these higher highs, price action just simply broke it completely. And that's why I don't like shallow testing of areas. I like price action to actually come into an area in the market, a struggle. But when we tap into that area before we can anticipate the price action is going to go to the upside. So we blew through these levels, and right now I don't really like this price action. And right now I don't really like this price action because what you're going to need is a clean pullback either to the retest level, either to the retest level or to somewhere which I don't think is quite clean, and then you can see a potential push to the downside. But I wouldn't trade these sells until price action actually breaks below these newly created lows. Wherever the newly created lows stop, that's when I start anticipating sells again. Just because price action was in an uptrend from a 4H perspective, now we're only starting the downtrend, and once we start this downtrend, we need a confirmation of a potential lower low before the actual downtrend has started. Jumping onto US 30, pretty clean. We finally tapped into the level that we were looking at last week. You can see that initially last week and Friday around NFP times, we tapped into this point of interest. We then tumbled, and that I feel like that showed its hand in that you can see how much orders is laying in this point of interest or order block. However, now coming back into this level, you can see the reaction once again from a higher time frame perspective, being the 4H. You can now then scale down onto time frames and find areas in the market that depict and where price action is in a break structure. So looking at this, you can clearly see that price action broke above these areas right here, forming this higher high. We then form this higher low to then push to the upside and form this higher high. Now price action has come immediately to fill these areas. And what we could see is the intraday push to the upside now. But if we do see the break of these lows, that will be perfect. If these lows can really break, this will be amazing. This will be amazing, guys. Like, if these lows can break, then what we could potentially see is something somewhat like this, where we get a pullback, a continuation, retest of those areas, and then sell-offs, something to that sort. And yeah, that's the analysis. I think for me, obviously, I'm not going to be trading GJ tomorrow. Uh, what I am going to be doing tomorrow is sitting on my hands and just waiting for the markets to play out exactly with what it does, and then I'll come back on Friday and we'll see how things pan out. And like this creative nature here in this price action is just, yeah, it's just quite, it's taken practically 3-4 days for price action to get up into this level, and then you can see the momentum in which we rejected these areas. So I do think there's a high chance of a push to the downside going into tomorrow. I think there is an extremely high chance of a push to the downside going into tomorrow. If we take a look at the weekly candle, what you can see is, yes, we took out last week's weekly high, but I think that's more so of a liquidity grabbing last week's weekly high to then start pushing to the downside and forming structure to the downside. Yeah, guys. Yeah, that's been my week. I'm pretty much break even for the week. Not pretty much, I am break even for the week. I've showed you guys. Let me actually take you guys through these trades before I go because there's still time. So this is my before picture for my first trade on Monday, and it's simple. We had a double top on the 15-minute time frame, and price action pushed to the downside firstly, and then we came back into the point of interest. And all I did was I waited for price action to close bearish on the 15-minute. But number one was to break 1 minute structure. So once we broke 1 minute structure in around these areas here, You can see we had a push to the downside. We then had a pullback, and then I believe we closed around here. On the 15-minute time frame, I set my sell stops below structure. And let's check the after picture. I think this was a pretty quick. Oh no, it wasn't a quick trade. And the rest is history, really. So this double top area played out pretty clean. What you can see is that low lows, lower highs were formed all the way through, failing to break previous lower highs, which was clean. So yeah, and then the loss, I don't think I have the before picture, but it's pretty simple. So these areas from a 15-minute level was my breakout area. And once we got the breakout of these areas here, this had hit TP already. I then anticipated that once we got the breakout, we got a pullback, that the next candle was going to continue. Now, the next candle did close bearish. However, I think the move was just exhausted. And I feel like there's no feeling any type of way about this particular trade just because of it meeting all my rules and me just needing to take it. I think the only thing that I could potentially have changed was the fact that maybe I needed to place my stop above these areas. Other than that, there's nothing else that I could have changed. Nothing at all. And yeah, so that's been that's been my week, guys. I hope that you guys enjoyed this little breakdown of the charts and the page that we're looking at. So to sum it up, I am pretty. Let me take a look at it. I am. I am bullish on DXY, barring the fact that it holds the key area where it's at. Then I'm bearish on EU. I am bearish on GJ. USD ZAR, I'm neutral. I'm bearish on US30. So, yeah, guys, from your boy Marcy at the Modern Day Trader, I hope you guys have a wonderful week further, and I hope you guys have a profitable one too. And don't forget that your unmatched perspicacity, coupled with your sheer indefatigability, makes you a feared opponent in any realm of human endeavor. From your boy, peace out, man.